we are in the middle of getting all of our VBS stuff ready, as you can see behind me. And so we are actually not going to have time to get a new podcast out this week. So we will be back next week, hopefully, even though that's the week of VBS, with our final 5 questions answered. And in the meantime, enjoy this classic episode. See you next week.
Well, hi guys. Thanks for watching our podcast. Quick announcement before we dive right in. We accidentally left one of the cameras on a very specific setting that puts a little box around my face and kind of moves it around as I move. We didn't mean to do that. It wasn't some new feature we were trying out, but we still wanted to put the whole podcast up. So don't be too distracted by that, but let's jump in.
Well, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Thank you so much for downloading the Faith Life podcast of Discovery Fellowship Church. I'm your host, Pastor Nathan, here with my co-host, Pastor Matt.
Hey, guys.
And hopefully you're having a great day. I know we are here. But hey, before we get started, as always, if you take a minute, make sure you leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you downloaded this podcast. And if you are watching us on YouTube, awesome. Welcome. Thanks for joining us here. Leave us a comment down below. Let us know how things are going, what you think about the video version of this podcast. And of course, if you would like to be a part of this podcast, you can email podcast@dfchurch.com. That's podcast@dfchurch.com. Now, as we get started today, we are going to hit some news stories. I always love to talk about what's going on in the world. So Matt, what do you got for me?
Yeah, so another hurricane has touched down here in the United States. This one, I think a couple weeks ago, we talked about the rare one in California.
Which has been a long...
So, I mean, it's hurricane season right now over on the East Coast. So Florida is ready for it, but the Idalia, I think, is the name of this hurricane that just touched down at I think they call it the Big Bend area, which is where like the Panhandle meets the peninsula of Florida. And so from what I have seen and heard, it's the strongest in over 125 years.
Oh, wow.
This Cat 3 hurricane touching down in that area, making landfall, I guess is what they call it. Tornadoes touchdown.
Has it hit so far?
Yeah, so it hit. And so there's like swells of like 8-foot waves inland. So a lot of flooding. I did hear that there has been loss of life as well. So just, again, another big tragedy, and been praying for that region. And then they're obviously tracking a few more off the coast.
So here's a question. Last year, we were in Orlando at the Experience Conference at this time. We had a little bit of rain, but nothing else happening. The Experience Conference is happening right now.
Yes.
Are they dealing with crazy weather?
Because this hurricane has gone to the northwest.
I guess that's true.
It's not really affecting Orlando. They've had their typical rains, kind of like we experienced at Experience Conference last year.
Oh, man. All right. Well, here's the news story that I was looking at. All right. So do you remember everybody kind of made this thing a double feature where you'd go see Barbie and Oppenheimer. Barbieheimer, right? There's a new one. Are you ready for it? The new combo.
Okay.
The new movie opening on the same day. 2 interestingly combined movies.
Okay.
Here's the headline. Taylor Swift Eras Tour concert film will open in theaters the same day as the new Exorcist movie. So a concert film of this. So I've heard stuff about tickets for this concert are like outrageously expensive. So if you didn't want to spend like $2,000, you can now just go see it in the movie theater.
Right.
But
it's not the same.
I don't know. It might be better. Because think about this. If you're at a concert,
if you're a Swiftie.
You're so far back.
Yeah.
This will be like right up on stage. But then you could also stick around after.
And watch The Exorcist.
And they're calling it Exorswift.
Exorswift. Wow.
The Exorswift is the name that they're putting this on.
Real quick.
Which to me sounds awesome. I love that acronym of Exorswift is just so fun.
I did not know that they had made another Exorcist movie.
They made 3 of them already.
That's weird.
Yeah.
So I was at the movie theaters with my wife last week, and it was really and I'm going to sound like an old person right now. It was loud. There were a lot of moments in the previews where I was like, oh my goodness, this is intense. Well, this preview for The Exorcist comes on, and it was like the most frightening thing I think I've ever seen in my entire life, just from the previews.
So it
was so creepy.
So maybe That's the order you should watch it in. Is
Exorcist first, and then you get that garbage out of your mind.
Now, all right. So here's the thing.
It wasn't just me, by the way. I am not just the old one, because I looked around while this preview was on because I did not want to see what was on the screen. And there were people like plugging their ears, closing their eyes. Like that's how intense the preview was for it. I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready emotionally, physically, spiritually. It was intense, man.
Now you're talking about the Swifties, and like it's not the same. However, AMC had a loading screen thing. You're in line to access AMC theaters. Thank you for your patience as we experience high traffic volume. You're in this queue for all visitors. When it is your turn, you have 10 minutes to begin your Taylor Swift concert ticket purchase.
Wait, to get not for like going to the actual concert.
To buy the tickets to the
a
movie of it. And
Taylor
it's not
Swift,
so here's the other thing.
Like
here's the other thing. I don't
ridiculous.
think they're normal price tickets. I think they're specialty price tickets.
Okay, so it's gonna be like $30.
I think it's like
instead of-
20.
Okay,
I think I saw a screenshot from Cinemark,
Wow.
my old stomping grounds.
yeah, your old stomping grounds.
That is gonna be like $30.
So-
$20.
Is this like telling that the Exorcist and the Taylor Swift thing are combined? Because if you like Taylor Swift, you must be possessed by something.
Yes. All right. So here,
I'm sorry, if you're a Taylor Swift
Holy
fan, I
cow.
apologize. That was very
this
not
Taylor
kind.
Swift concert movie is almost as long as Oppenheimer, 2 hours and 40 minutes, and it goes. Tickets are on sale. I'm looking to see.
Nathan, this is possibly the most time I've ever spent talking about Taylor Swift.
I know.
And I am
Me as well. I'm just trying to see if they're
I'm
the
sad
normal
for myself.
I just want to see if they're the normal price tickets. Wow, it's sold out at 6 p.m. Yeah, special price $22.89 for an XD ticket,
Okay.
which is a little more than normal.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't really care for Taylor Swift personally.
And I also don't want to see The Exorcist, so I'm going to stay home that
You're
weekend.
not going to do Extra Swift. Did you see? You
Extra
saw
Swift.
Oppenheimer.
I did see
but
Oppenheimer.
You did see Barbie.
I have not
At
seen
the
Barbie.
same- see, you're
You've
supposed to
seen
double
Barbie, and
feature it.
you
So
haven't seen Oppenheimer.
together
so
we've done it.
Together we're Barbenheimer.
I don't think it works that way. I don't think we can come.
I apologize to our listeners and our viewers today.
Well, we're. This is. I mean,
This is where faith meets life. So
this
how
is
do we
where
bring this back to faith?
Meets life. Well, maybe if you. Here's the thing. I had a friend. He runs movie theaters. He preaches at his church regularly.
Okay.
Awesome guy who loves horror movies.
Okay.
And he says it because it always illustrates the existence of actual evil, and the themes of them fit very well into biblical worldviews.
Okay.
So The Exorcist is about demon possession. That's in the Bible.
Yeah.
Now, how do they exercise them? Maybe is not a biblical
By lifting
thing.
weights.
But,
That's your dad joke for the day, friends.
Thank you. I love
Yes.
dad jokes. So what I'm saying is that if you want to go see The Exorcist as a Christian, is that allowed?
I'll pray for you. I'm
Can
just
we, you might get possessed. But the whole point of the movie is that at least I don't know. Have you ever seen the original Exorcist?
I saw the original.
Right. She gets possessed because she's playing with a Ouija board. Right. The idea is inviting spiritual forces to control you is a bad
Probably
idea.
a bad idea. Yeah. So we can learn something.
We can
from
all
it.
get on
Yeah.
board with this. Is
And
what I'm saying.
I'm pretty sure we did a podcast about
Can Christians watch rated R movies?
just movies and media and how we as Christians relate to that, or do we just talk about it often?
So we talked. All right, we've done a podcast about why are Christian movies so bad,
Right.
and then we did a podcast about stereotypical can a Christian do this? And so I think we talked about movies a little bit. We talked about playing D&D. We talked about certain things that that certain Christian circles have said oh, that's bad.
Yeah. So I'm in the camp of with The Exorcist, use the same discernment. You know what type of effect it's going to have on you.
Right.
And you know what type of filter you have. And with everything, right, look for how, what God might be wanting you to learn through whatever it is. In every part of our life, we should be doing that, right? Speaking of bad Christian movies, I highly recommend Jesus Revolution if you haven't seen it. That is not,
but that's not bad,
It's
right?
not a bad Christian movie. So on that podcast, we destroyed Christian movies because sadly,
They destroyed themselves.
they're bad. But this one is fantastic. Highly recommend it. I finally watched it last week, and that's why I'm sharing that now, because it's a really good movie, and it's kind of it motivates you to actually get out of your little bubble and shell. I'm talking to you Christians and myself,
nice.
and actually interact with people who might be different than you, and see them the way that Christ sees them. And so it's just a super encouraging movie.
I haven't seen
watch
it
it and go do something about it, right? Don't just watch a movie and be like, oh, that made me feel so good. No, like get off your butt and do something.
Yeah, Lex has seen it, and I have not yet, so I do need to watch it. But I've heard it's
I feel
great.
like I'm in a mood today.
Look,
I need to. All right.
you know why?
I'm gonna tone
Here,
it back. Sorry,
all
guys.
right, all right. Before here's the reason why, Matt.
Yeah.
Let me tell you.
Yeah.
We are getting back into the fall.
Yeah.
Youth group is starting again, and one of the things for you as the listener, you might not know this, or viewer, for youth group, we pre-record some content every single week, and it's that youth group mindset's a little bit over the top, a little bit zany. Like by the end of last year, every single week we recorded, it was like, man, Nathan is in a mood. Like I was just something. So I think
On
it's
the
just,
like the youth ones.
yeah, on the youth
you
ones.
you did get.
And
a
so
little,
I think it's just because we're recording this all right now, all
right.
together. You just kind of got that energy going.
I'm ready. Hopefully you guys are ready too.
So with that in mind,
Yeah.
let's go to this very serious topic. It's not that serious, but it's
it
interesting.
kind of is.
It's more. I'd say, yeah, you're right. It's serious.
Yeah.
All right. So the question that I wanted to talk about today was inspired by some TikTok videos I saw.
Yeah.
And we're actually going to watch them and kind of talk about them here. But let me introduce this a little bit. So I found this TikTok account. The guy's name is Prohibition Theology.
Okay.
That's not his name. That's his account name.
Right.
He is a professor of like biblical studies
Okay.
and Christian
Yep.
who has taught like doctoral level students for quite a while.
He's got a PhD in
got
like
a
New
PhD.
Testament studies or something like that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. He's a very intelligent guy, but his whole premise is that church should not exist as an institution.
Right.
And what do we mean by that? When we say church as an institution, what we're saying is like a cohesive, hierarchical structure. It's a hard word to say. Like specific defined roles and building, place, time, like all of that stuff, he says, has no connection to what Jesus taught or did. Okay. And so his whole idea, and we'll let him kind of speak for himself when we watch some of these videos, we can react to them. But the whole basic idea is that church, that Jesus would not recognize us as a church.
Okay.
Put it as simply as possible. So with that in mind, let's go to the first video clip. We're going to watch this. We're going to talk about this, and we're going to see kind of what we think about that.
Okay.
All right.
Professor, why do you not recognize that churches have every right to consider themselves to be churches? Well, of course they have that right. My personal view, based on Jesus and the New Testament, and you're welcome to disagree. My personal view is this. If it's organized rather than organic, it's a religion. It's not church. If it has a single leader other than Jesus or a small group of leaders who herd and organize the many, it's not church. It's a religion. If it has to happen in a particular place at a particular time, especially in a building that everyone put money together so that this thing could happen right there, it's not church. It's a religion. Are there good religions as opposed to not so good religions? Sure. Do I need to decide which one's which? No, because I'm actually part, and I've been part of communities for many years that don't have those particular issues. We're humans. We have issues. But we need contexts where we can deal with those issues organically in real life and mutually, not in settings of organized religion. So somebody asked me, hey, Professor, what do you do in terms of church? Well, I'll tell you in the next.
In the next what?
in the next video.
Oh, okay.
So I think there's another video where he does talk about what it looks like.
Okay.
And I've watched it. I don't know if we're going to watch that today, but I can kind of summarize that.
Yeah.
But let's go through kind of his points there.
Yeah.
Because I was taking notes. I think you
Yep,
might
I
have
took
been
some
as
notes too. Real quick.
Yeah.
Just so our viewers and listeners are aware.
Yeah.
You and I, Nathan, we're both pastors at a local organized church.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Institution.
We would be
as-
a
as
religion,
Professor
not
would say.
not church.
Right. Okay. But we're both like on staff.
we
at
are.
a local, what we call a local church.
Right. And I think that what really struck me about these videos, before we get into the very specifics, into the nitty gritty, what struck me is that I was immediately defensive, well, no.
Right. It's triggering.
Right. Because we, as you said, are pastors who are employed at a church that's in a building that is organized, et cetera, et cetera. And this guy's basically saying, well, no, you're not. And so my first thought I want to make sure is am I defensive about that because I genuinely disagree and I think biblically he's incorrect, or it's just because this is what I do and where we are. So I think it's important to ask these questions and consider what that means, because ultimately, I guess, if we were convinced by something like this, that we should quit and change to doing church
For sure.
in a different way.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think this is a new argument either. I feel like I've heard this before.
Right.
I know other, we talked briefly about Francis Chan,
Right.
Where he left a mega church model and moved into this house church community-based model in San Francisco.
Right. And if you want to read about that, Francis Chan has a book. It's called Letters to the Church.
Mm-hmm.
And that is basically, he argues the same thing. It's not a real church if you do any of those things. Not quite maybe that hard.
I would
but
say,
he
I feel like
basically
he's not
says
as harsh.
The
His is
way we
more-
should not, the way we should do church, though, is no paid staff,
Right.
small groups, never bigger than 15.
Yeah.
All right. So let's get into the specifics of what the professor, I don't remember what his real name is, but the professor,
Professor Prohibition.
Professor Prohibition, said.
The first thing that stood out to me, okay, right away at the start of this video, he said, my personal view is.
Right.
So right away, for me, I have I'm throwing a red flag in that moment, right? Because I don't, no offense to anyone, I don't care about your personal view. I care about what
Right.
Scripture says. And so I know he has his reason why based on Scripture, but this video doesn't talk about that at all.
Okay.
Right? This video
He doesn't really get
God's
into
word.
his specifics on why.
Right.
You have to actually watch quite.
So my assumption
a
is
bit.
his personal view is based upon his interpretation of Scripture. Is that accurate based upon his other videos and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And one thing, and this is something I would agree with. He is very much about. You have to be really careful looking at single verses. You've got to look at the
Absolutely.
narrative of
Yeah.
Scripture. 100% agree. And he talks a lot about it. It's what was the narrative of what Jesus was trying to accomplish? And we kind of get into these ideas of new humanity and a new way of being human. And that almost kind of veers into an N.T. Wright also type of a view, which is interesting. And so I think that understanding what the whole of the biblical story is important.
Yeah.
But
I actually agreed with a lot of the things he said.
Right.
I think I disagreed with a few things he said as well.
Okay.
But-
Well, let's jump in. What did you?
Yeah. So
His first point.
his first thing was it the organic?
If it's organized versus organic,
Yeah,
it's a
okay.
religion, not a church.
Yeah. So to address that, organized versus organic. Organic is a buzzword right now.
Okay.
Right? Everything happens organically.
Yeah.
In fact, I've used it in my programming here at a local organized church, organized religion. I've said we need to let these things happen organically, right? So I agree that organic relationship and community is necessary. It's biblical. It's also what we as a local organized religion are trying to help lead our people in. That's why small groups are so valuable to us, because we want that community where those relationships happen organically.
Right.
Right. But guess what? If I'm going to invite you and your wife over for dinner, I have to plan that and organize that.
Right.
Right. And so, and I know I'm maybe nitpicking his words and he would probably come at me with this, but you're organizing this organic relationship, right? When he has these communities he says he's been a part of for years, I doubt it's something where it's just, he's randomly walking down the street and all of a sudden those same 12 people are there.
Right.
It's, hey, every Saturday night, come over to my place.
Right. So you're picking
Yeah.
a specific time, place, and meeting, but you're not limited to that.
Right.
And that's huge.
He's also picking a time and a place and a building that people pulled money together for to purchase, whether that's this church building or your house.
Right.
People pulled money together to purchase that. Now, he did it because of his professor salary. He bought his own house.
Right.
I get that. But like, there's a lot of like semantics with the words. And I'm like, I feel like
Right.
if we get to the heart of what we're
So-
trying to accomplish, we
Right.
would agree with each other
So
fully on it.
I think that gets into his next
Okay.
point then, which he says, if you have a single leader other than Jesus, or even a
Right.
group of leaders that are responsible for herding, directing,
Yeah.
organizing.
Did he say hurting?
Yeah, I think he said herding, yes.
Well,
then-
we are stupid little sheeple.
Right. Then you are not a church, you're a religion.
Your religion.
Right. So he would say that because we have a hierarchical structure, we have
Right.
pastors, we
Yeah.
have elders,
Yeah.
we have deacons.
Yeah.
We're not a church anymore
Yeah.
because his view is that Jesus didn't do that.
Okay.
What do you think about that?
So let's go to the book of Acts.
Okay.
Okay. And just kind of look at how early Christian people became Christians early on in like the movement of the church, right?
Yes.
So Jesus came, he died, he rose again. He showed himself to his followers. Gift of the Holy Spirit came down. They were charged to be witnesses, Acts chapter 1, verse 8, in all of the world,
Yeah.
right? Witnesses meaning sharing who Jesus is with the world, that he is
Okay.
the Son of God, the Messiah. And so they did that. We actually talked about this, or I guess this is going to be released before youth group.
Yes.
Youth group's talking about this week.
Right.
This whole idea of how we were like designed and wired for community. And we see in Acts chapter 2 what that community looks like, right? It's worshiping together. It's praying together. It's the breaking of bread together. It's the sharing of resources together.
Okay.
Okay. Now, it talks about how Peter did this. Peter preached or taught.
Right.
And 3,000 people were added to the church that day, it says,
Yes.
right? Now, I know that's the Big C church. That's the universal church. It's not like a local
Right.
building. It's Christ followers.
Right.
And so I guess maybe if we take like a little step back, what is church?
Right.
Right? Like that's the question. And I think that's what he's getting at. He's saying church, and I agree with him, church isn't a building.
Right.
The ecclesia, according
Ecclesia,
to the New
yes.
Testament, is a specific group of people at a specific place at a specific time for a specific purpose. And that's the good and welfare of the community that they're in for the glory of God.
Right.
Okay, and
right.
so-
It's all, and it's the bride of Christ. We
Right.
we get that. And
Yeah.
and now I will say, and he talked about this too, like that word there, ecclesia, just means crowd or gathering.
Yeah.
So it doesn't, and he says that is actually a less formal word than you would use for like an institutional, like a synagogue or things like that.
Right.
He would say they would, if he wanted to use, and I'm going back to other videos I've watched with this guy, he would say like, if Paul wanted to say the church was similar, he would use the word that would get translated synagogue. That's like the more formal
Right.
synagogue
Yeah.
in Greek or whatever. But he uses ecclesia, which just means crowd.
Right.
Gathering.
Yeah.
So he's making the point that the way Paul talks about it is less formal, less organized, less. Well, yeah, I think that's the organization. It's
Yeah.
the organized part
Yeah.
that this guy has a big
Yeah.
problem with.
And I agree with him that the church isn't this building,
Right.
right?
We
In
all
fact,
learned that during the pandemic.
Yeah, as a pastor, I feel like I preach and teach this pretty regularly that like the church isn't you showing up here once a week on a Sunday morning.
Right.
You are the church,
Right.
right? Like what you go and you do on a daily basis, you're being the church,
Right.
It's not, we're not limited to these four walls. We're not limited to our 501c3 status or whatever it might be, right? That's not the church.
Right.
What we've done is we've organized a place where ideally you can come and you can worship together because, and maybe this is where we're failing just as people, is we have over scheduled our lives where we are so stinking busy that we don't actually do church.
Right.
We aren't the church on a daily basis because I'm busy with work and getting my kids, shuttled here and there and all these other things going on with my life that I'm not actually gathering with believers for prayer and worship and community.
Right.
Except on a Sunday morning because I've made that a priority in my life. And so like,
Right. So we've actually kind of made it a problem of putting church as just another activity among many's.
Right.
Like, and so I guess we would agree with him is that like Sunday morning is not church. And that might be a shocking statement to say. That's not what we say, like church.
yeah,
That's an aspect.
right. It's
That's
one
part of what we
small
mean.
part.
But if we are, to use my least favorite phrase, doing life together
Yes.
throughout the week,
Intentionally doing life together.
Oh, I hate that so much. You are
love it.
like engaged with. All right, so I guess I'll be the. So his name is Thorsten, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Thorsten Moritz. I looked it up.
That's a really cool name.
If I know, well, he's German. If I want to be the Thorsten's advocate, so the question would be if our model of doing church is at the size, and we're not a big church, although we are technically bigger than average now. The average church size is like 60. We're maybe 200 on a good week. If that model of church says, well, it's too big, you can't do community in that big of a group. That's why we do small groups, and that's where community is. So the question, what I would imagine he would say, which we were talking about this, I wonder if maybe at a future episode, if this topic needs more, we actually invite him on and talk through this. Different.
And I
story
do
here
feel
or
like this
there.
topic is much more than a 45-minute podcast
Probably
episode.
is. So but the question might be then posed, well, if the small groups are where you're really going to be able to focus and like care about each other, build each other, then what is the point of having the building, the pastors, the organization, all of that stuff? Why not just basically have a small group that doesn't just meet once a week, but you're eating together and doing life together, but you're involved in each other's lives.
Quit mocking that.
And then, like, for instance, a need comes up. They're like, hey, my neighbor
Yeah.
just lost their job. And you, as that small group, say, let's help them out. Like,
Yeah,
why do
for
you
sure.
need what we have?
That's awesome. Those are great questions, Thorsten advocate or whatever it is. So my initial response is we can do more together, right? We're better together, right? And so with the 5 of us that maybe can gather together in a small, regular, organic community of Christ followers, spurring one another on towards love and good deeds, right? All that can happen anywhere. But the 5 of us, let's just say I'm going to throw some people together just for some context. So you and your family, me and my family. Jeremiah was on the podcast last week, him and his family, right? So let's say like we're a community together.
Right. We're a church,
we're a
quote
church.
unquote
We're a
church the way
church.
Thorsten
Yep.
would divide it. Define it.
And our neighbor loses his job.
Right.
I mean, I can provide them a couple meals. They can come and stay at my place, like if they lose their house. But we can only do so much.
Right.
But we pull together the resources of 300 people.
Yeah.
And now we can provide for them in ways that we were unable to before. And so like there is power in numbers. And so I think I don't want to limit what God can do through a small community.
I'm trying to remember, where is the section where Paul talks about there's a church in one city that then goes and assists, even though they don't have much, they are out there sending in resources to this other church that needed help. Because that's kind of what it made me think of, is like, even Paul seems to have this idea that church is actually bigger, not smaller, in that this one church in this one city, out of, even though they don't have much, is sending money and resources to another church in another city who are in need. And well, so we're saying those people of those. And so it's like kind of what we're hoping to have another podcast where I get some guests in, where we talk to other church leaders here in town about how can we actually work together, not as competition, but as all being the church ourselves anyway.
Right.
So in some ways, to what you're saying, you almost need a bigger definition of church, not smaller. And then it made me think about, again, what you were talking about. A small community is going to be more limited. Like I think about our Shine Pantry here at Discovery. That's possible because, now for those of you who don't know, who monthly we provide food and other household items to anybody. Like you, it doesn't matter who you are, just show up on that Saturday. Yep. We'll feed you breakfast and get you set up with a whole bunch of supplies, items you need. We don't care who you are. what doesn't matter, just show up and help. That exists because the larger size gives us a place to store all those supplies, to distribute those supplies, and a central point for anybody around us to find that. So there's a benefit to what we're having here that I don't think we would only have if even that loose community of communities were to band together.
And
so like you could do a house church.
Yeah.
But I still think like you need to know each other and work together.
Right. And Thor would agree with you on that. Thorsten?
I just call him Thor.
Thor. That's easier. Yes, Thor would agree with you on that, right? And I think that's what he's saying is you have all these small communities or big, but it's not organized, it's organic. They're pulling resources together without having to have, going back to the quote that we were talking about, a leader in place or this hierarchy of leadership structure happening. And so is there a biblical model for this, or do we just make it up?
So here's the other thing that's very interesting is we do not get, biblically speaking, a lot of prescriptive how church should look.
Right.
We get some description in Acts, and we get hints of it by how Paul talks to the churches. But I feel like, okay, so for instance, in Corinthians, Paul talks about what your church gathering should look like. There should be order, not disorder. Different ways gifts should be used. And there's an implication that there might be visitors there, non-Christians there, people who don't know God, who are going to be seeing and observing.
So
which
wait a minute.
To me seems bigger than just what happens in a house.
Are you saying that, because if Paul said there's supposed to be order, wouldn't that be organized and not organic?
Yes. This is where I feel like he's talking about all these different gifts. And so maybe his problem is that there's somebody who's like paid positions as opposed to just a bunch of people in a small setting using their gifts to work together for the good of, following Jesus and getting closer to him. And so let's talk about, let's move over to like, what are some of the things you think he gets right about this? Because I think there are some things, or maybe put another way, and then I'll let you talk for a minute. What are some of the problems that we could be doing better as a local institutionalized church?
Yeah, I think, and we've talked about this on our podcast of what's the point of church.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to spend too much time on it. You can go back and listen to that one, but there is value in community. He gets that right. We need other believers, and your phrase of doing life together that you loathe is necessary. Like we need that accountability. We need that support. We need that encouragement. We need all those things, right? And that's because that's the way God wired us. He created us to be in community with one another. In fact, you go all the way back to Genesis chapter 1. It's not good for man to be alone, right? Like from the very beginning of this order of creation, God has said we need relationship with him and with each other. And so he gets that right, that we need that organic community with each other. Is that better than doing life together, organic community?
Organic,
like that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
That's better.
It means the same thing.
It does.
So we need that organic community. And I absolutely agree. In fact, some of our least productive times as far as getting the organized part of our job done, but most productive times as far as just beneficial to us and our thinking are those random, like we're annoying each other in our offices, and we start talking about things that matter, not necessarily that matter to this Sunday morning's program, but that matter in life and that matter in, we talk a lot of like theology. We talk a lot of, hey, I saw this on TikTok. What do you think about it type of thing, right? And all those conversations, we're not scheduling those. Those happen organically. But our relationship with each other is because we have this connection of fellowship together as a part of this local church body.
Right.
And it's all, and this is kind of a weird way to put it, but like your local church building, your local institution of a church, as long as it is a Bible believing, Christ following community, they should be helping you get into these smaller communities where a lot of that stuff happens more organically, where you're building these deeper relationships. Because I agree with this guy. When I show up on a Sunday morning and I'm surrounded by 150 people, and I know his big issue is with mega churches, and maybe we'll get to that a little bit later.
That's the other video I wanted to watch.
Like there's only, okay, take a step back.
Okay, done.
When you are, thank you. When you're gathered together with hundreds, thousands, dozens, whatever number you want of believers worshiping God together.
Right.
And I talk about this week in our youth group stuff. There's value in that for you personally.
Right.
It grows your relationship with God. It grows your relationship with those people that you're worshiping with. There's some sort of power that God has designed and created in that community with each other.
Right.
You mentioned this time last year, we were at the worship experience or the experience conference.
Yeah.
And the best part of that conference, I loved a lot of the things I learned. Like it was great. I learned a lot of how to lead well, different technical aspects. I went to a lot of like next gen type things. But the best part about that was thousands of people who love Jesus worshiping him together.
Right.
No, like here's what was cool about it. They're all like, most of them are all like paid worshipers, for lack of a better phrase, right?
Yeah.
Like they're on staff at churches or they're volunteers at churches where it is their job to lead in different areas. But all gathered together, setting aside that title, I guess.
Yeah.
Because we're all just Christ followers.
Right.
And worshiping him together with thousands of people versus with 5 people, there's a difference in that. And I respond differently. And I don't think that's a heart issue for me. I think that's a design issue. It's the way we were created to do it together. And so these organic communities and meals and conversations that happen are necessary and valuable, but so is gathering together as the bigger body of Christ.
Right.
And if there weren't these organized churches, institutional religions, as he would call it, if those didn't exist, we wouldn't do it because we're really bad at gathering together in those larger groups. It just wouldn't happen.
Right. So I think ultimately what it kind of comes down to is it doesn't need to be an either or. Like it can be a both.
It should be a both and.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I was thinking like, and another thing I've heard him say is like, when you have a programmatic approach to your church where it's like there's going to be songs and then preaching and stuff like that, like you can never open up and you can never like discuss, and it's not
right.
But it's like, but Jesus taught that way. Like he would teach to 5,000 people
and not let them just have a Q&A with him.
There's times, but then there was times with small groups, small people. Like I think maybe trying to do both is probably and so maybe this is an overcorrection of the other side, the megachurch side, where it's so big that it is just a consumeristic.
Right.
You're going because you like it, but you don't have to do anything. You don't have to go deeper. Like you can stay shallow. So let's go real quick. Let's watch this other video. We'll respond to that, and then we'll kind of wrap it up with closing thoughts.
Sounds good.
Why in the world did I tell the leadership of a prominent megachurch in the upper Midwest a few years ago that I don't consider them to be church at all? Well, they asked me, they invited me. I didn't march in there, without invitation. I had to sign in, at that desk at the front and all the rest of it. After all, I entered a private property that functions just like any corporation out there. Okay, I put my parking sticker in the truck and all the rest of it. But what did I tell them? Well, and what did they ask me? First of all, what they asked me was, what is church? And how are we doing as church, in my opinion? And I said I can answer the first question, but not the second, because I don't think you are church. So let's first ask, what is church? And I'll give you 5 reasons now why I told them that I didn't think they were a church. Number 1, they take their cues from the corporate world, including their neighbors up and down, the street. They behave in exactly the same way. There's nothing subversive about them whatsoever. And it would be very hard to argue that somehow this is God's project humanity when it looks remarkably like what the world already has plenty of. And in fact, it seems to be kind of the opposite of a basic foundational purpose of the church, which is to be salt in this world, rather than the other way around. Number 2, deeply hierarchical, even single leadership at the top, despite the fact that in the New Testament is very clear the single leadership position is taken by Jesus. It's done. That position is gone, and it is taken by Jesus in every community, in every Jesus community, wherever it exists. Okay, so there are no other number 1 positions, and let alone to talk about the entire pyramid and leadership hierarchy and so on. Once again, there's nothing salty about that. Number 3, deeply centralized. Megachurches often have in their mission statement something that basically says we want to impact people further and further afield, which is speak for we want them to come to our services from further afield, and that we call that growth. And if it means gobbling up smaller churches along the way, no worries, we'll do it. That's what corporations do, of course, too. Number 4, it's self-serving. I told them, I said, when you need money to feed this beast, you even go to the Old Testament, even though you say your faith is New Covenant-based, Jesus-based. You go to the Old Testament, you take the tithing regulations when people gave 10% towards the temple and the priests. Well, I told you, you're basically a corporation that operates as a temple. That is hardly what Jesus had in mind in the New Testament. And finally, you're supposed to be here for the world. Are you benefiting the world in any shape or form? Aren't you just saying to the world, come here and comply with us culturally? Because, by the way, we comply with you culturally, that corporate thing again. Don't you end up then with something that says we're a church, but really it's a corporation at prayer? I don't think that's good enough. So those are 5 of the reasons I gave them. I gave them more. If you poke a little bit, I might just give you another 5.
Okay.
That's funny.
So that was interesting.
Yeah.
What's more of a problem with mega churches
Yeah.
than all church, but yeah.
The first note that I wrote down while watching that one was he seems a little salty. And then he kept talking about salt and being salty.
Different kind of salty.
Yeah. Just because at the beginning when he was talking about, I had to go to that desk and check in and had to get my parking tag and had to, on the private property. Like the way he said it, I'm like, oh man, dude's got some major issues.
Yeah, he didn't like
that.
It looking at all like the corporate world.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
Let's talk about this. Yeah. What do you guys think? He said this thing, how can this be God's project when it looks just like what the world has done?
Yeah.
That stuck out. I liked that.
I like that a lot. And I agree completely. So as church leaders,
right,
like my job, my responsibility is to make sure that I look like Christ and I'm helping others to look like Christ and I'm not taking my cues from the corporate world. Now, he's talking about a very specific church.
Right.
He's like including his neighbors from up the street or whatever. So like this church is maybe right next to something that, I don't know, in the secular world that the church just looks just like that other place over there. Again, I don't know exactly who or where he's talking about.
We don't know which church he was talking about.
But I agree, we need to be salt in the world and not let the world be influencing us, right?
Yeah.
In the world, not of the world. So we need to bring Jesus to the world around us. I agree with you completely. And my favorite was... Of the things I agreed with was he said, are you benefiting the world in any shape or form?
I like that a lot too. Yep, I agree.
Like, so if I say as a church leader, like Discovery Fellowship Church is for Northern Colorado and like we want the world around us to know and love Jesus. And we're here to support you along that journey. And even if you don't yet know who Jesus is, I'm here to love and support you.
Right.
Like if I say that,
we got to back it up.
I got to back it up with my actions, right? Like do something about it. And so if I'm just saying that and it's just words and fluff to try and get people in the door and get more money, then I agree. That's a problem. You're not the church.
Right.
You're what he said, you're just feeding the beast, right? You're asking
he
for
said,
money
when
to
we
feed
need
the
money
beast.
to feed the beast. And he said, you're just a corporation that parades as a temple.
Yeah. Dude, that's good. And church leaders, we need to be asking those questions regularly. Am I just a corporation masquerading as a temple? Or man, am I completely sold out for Jesus and living my life for him and wanting to bring as many people along this journey as possible. And he's blessed us and given us this place where we can invite people in where it's warm in the winter and cool in the summer.
Right.
And we can provide a place for that community to happen. Right. And we can help connect you in relationships where you can have that organic day in and day out church life together. So praise God, let's do it.
So let me ask this question.
Yeah.
Do you think the answer is at a certain point you should not let your church get any bigger numerically and you should just split into a different building that maybe is not even connected necessarily?
Yeah.
Do you think that part of the problem, or do you think the part of the solution would be never be a mega church?
I don't think big churches are the problem.
Okay.
I think potentially, and I'm going to offend some people.
Okay.
These people aren't listening to our podcast anyway, so it doesn't matter. Potentially, mega church pastors, you've lost sight of your original vision.
Okay.
And it's become about the platform for yourself that you can build.
Oh.
And that's a problem.
Yeah,
right?
that would
and
be
so
a problem.
that with a mega church is the problem. Now,
Right.
if you have a church that is growing because everyone loves Jesus and is pursuing Christ, and that is contagious,
Right.
right? Like Christ is attractive,
Right.
Like being Christ-like is different than this world, and people want it. The problem is we as Christians often don't look like Christ. We look like he was saying, the world, right?
But do you think that there might be some value in saying, look, if we continue to grow, we can't ever be actual community. So we need, for the health of keeping that original vision,
Right.
to split into smaller groups.
I think it's going to be different for every church.
Okay.
And I'm using the word church for every organized institutional religion, whatever he wants to call it, right? I think it's going to be
Right.
different for, you have to examine what that looks like for you. I think you can have 3,000 people showing up to your service on Sunday morning and still have a whole bunch of those small groups that are happening, those communities that exist, right? And you're just all then, the 300 small groups are gathering
Right.
together for one large group. And honestly, like for some people, it might be easier if I don't yet have a relationship with Jesus to show up to that larger group
Right.
and start to explore this idea a little more
Right.
than it might be to show up to someone's house. But it's also probably a lot easier for you as someone who has a relationship with that person who doesn't know Jesus to share your faith through the way that you live, the
Right.
conversations you have, the way that you love, the way you look like Jesus.
Yep.
And then also with your words as well, because that's super important. And so, yeah, I don't think, again, like you said, the Bible doesn't necessarily give us the prescription of
Right.
this is how you must do community
Okay.
or
Yeah.
church. And so I think there's a lot of different methods that work great. And we talk about this all the time. As long as the message is Jesus,
Right.
use whatever method gets the message of Jesus out there.
Right. And it's kind of funny because one of his big problems was that it looks too much like the culture.
Yeah.
But I think I've always kind of felt, looking at the way Paul talks about it and Jesus talks about it, is that it's left in unintentionally vague so that it can follow what cultural needs exist, not so that God's project can just look like the culture, but so that our culture has some sort of a connection to it so that they can then connect into it.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like saying, well, you know what? You eat dinner, and in the pagan places, they ate dinner too.
Right.
So that can't be
eat
from
dinner
God.
anymore.
But clearly we see in the Bible, like sharing meals together
Right.
was a huge part of it. So it's not that you can't ever look like the world around you, because the world around you is a big, varied thing. It's like, what you just need to be very careful. What parts of this should look like the world and what part of it should stand in stark contrast to the world.
Right.
And that's going to be, so you've got enough cultural touch points that you have, I don't, this word might have some unnecessary connotations, but relevance.
I knew you were going to say that.
But you're still different enough that you stand out then in the ways that matter.
Well, and I've always said, maybe I haven't said, I've always thought, I can never out entertain the world,
Right.
but I can absolutely outlove the world.
Right.
Right. So like I can never, we were talking about youth group and how that's now kicked off. Our Wednesday night space and programming is not going to be a trip to Disneyland.
Right.
I just can't do that. I don't have the
You don't
margin,
have
the
Disney
space,
bucks.
the money.
Although Disney doesn't have those bucks anymore either.
That's a good point. But I can love in an authentic way and point you to the one who loves unconditionally better than Disney ever can, right? Better than the world can and better. So like my goal is not entertainment. My goal is not the largest, whatever you want to call it, organized institutional religion. My goal is to just love and be faithful with the people that God brings before me. Right. My goal is to Acts 1:8, and you'll be my witnesses in all of Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and even to the ends of the earth.
Yeah.
This is my Jerusalem right here. My goal is the Great Commission.
Yep.
Right. Like, and so if, again, the method I use, that's changed so many times over the 20 years I've been in ministry.
Yeah.
And that's great.
Right.
My message and the mission of growing in our relationship with Jesus, of loving God, loving people, and making disciples. Like that's the most simple way to just summarize the mission of the church in general.
Yeah.
I know every organized church is going to have different missions and values they do, but ultimately it all like ties back to love God, love people, make disciples.
Right.
Like that doesn't change. And so whether you're at a mega church, whether you're at a smaller organized church building, or it's just a home community, those are all great as long as we're faithful to what Christ has called us to.
Yep. I would agree. I think that's a good way to sum it up. So we might come back at a later episode to talk about this more, because I think there's a lot that can be said. We've talked about even, what is church a few times, and we'll continue to talk about it. But let's move on for the sake of time to our favorite segment. I said, it's easy. I said our favorite segment. It's not just your favorite segment. It's our favorite segment.
Isn't it normally your, my favorite segment?
Yeah, but I'm saying it's
I don't know why that's how you talk. My favorite segment.
That is not how I talk. But Ask the AI. Now, at this point, we don't have any sponsored ChatGPT 4. So this is not the cream of the crop AI. It's fine though. It's actually still pretty good. I'm actually not even using ChatGPT this week. I'm using a different one called Claude. But if you'd like to sponsor us, to get ChatGPT 4 was really awesome. So if you'd like to sponsor us for $20, you can get a month's worth of sponsorship. You will get us to pick a prompt. You will get us telling who you are every episode of that podcast. If you need some sort of ad for maybe a business you run, something, whatever you want, we'll figure it out. Just email podcast@dfchurch.com and say, I want to sponsor ChatGPT.
Now, are you just looking for money to feed the beast?
Yes.
Is this just like a corporate?
This is the corporate feed the beast. Yeah, I'm feeding the beast that's called AI. Oh,
no, honestly,
that's
even
what the beast is in Revelation.
That's true.
It's AI. No, it's not.
I might like step on your thunder a little bit. More important than sponsoring the AI thing is share this podcast with people, you guys, because honestly, we believe in the conversations we're having. Like our goal is to help bring the questions and the doubts and the struggles of life and how that connects and intersects with your faith. Right. And so, I believe in what we're doing. I know obviously you do.
Yeah.
The reason I like being your co-host is because I really believe that the things we talk about matter.
Yes.
And this is an easy way. Like you don't have to have them come to this organized institution on a Sunday morning. When you have this conversation and someone's like, oh man, like science and faith, they just can't coexist. Man, point them to our podcast about how science and faith can coexist potentially, right? And so share this with people.
That was a multi-part episode, wasn't it?
You can also sponsor the ChatGPT stuff, but man,
but more important,
podcast
I agree. More important is sharing this episode or any episode, the podcast. Very helpful.
Sweet. All right, let's get on to our favorite
Here's what
part.
I asked. What are the top 10 books other than the Bible that every Christian should read? And I want to see if you've read any of these.
Okay.
All right.
I'm ready.
Are you ready? All right, number 10. The Four Loves by C.S. Lewis. Lewis explores the 4 types of human love: affection, friendship, erotic love, and unconditional love from a Christian perspective.
Okay.
I've not read that. I've read a lot of Lewis, but
I've read a summary of that book, but I have not read that particular book. I have a feeling Lewis is going to be on here 3 times.
You think your guess is 3?
Yep.
Okay. Number 9. The Holiness of God by R.C. Sproul.
Yeah.
This book helps readers understand God's absolute purity and how it should inform our relationship with him.
Yeah, that one's pretty good. I have read that. I have that on ebook, and I think it's actually available for free.
It might be. Some of these
A lot of
Will be,
R.C.
actually.
Sproul's books have been converted to ebooks and available for free. So, yeah.
So that takes us to number 8, Knowing Scripture by R.C. Sproul. Sproul provides guidance on how to read, interpret, and apply the Bible in faithful and meaningful ways.
I've not read that one.
I haven't either, but I bet it'd be good.
Yeah.
I've read part of this next one. Number 7, Confessions by Augustine, or Augustine. I don't know how you say that. Written in the 4th century.
Yeah.
Augustine's Confessions is considered one of the first Christian autobiographies. It focuses on his journey to faith.
I've only read different sections of that.
Right.
But not the whole thing.
He wrote a lot.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's fine.
I've quoted him a few times in messages.
But so
I've
far,
given.
all these are good.
Good
so
books.
far. Check them out. Number 6, The Problem of Pain by C.S. Lewis.
Yeah. Okay.
Lewis wrestles with the question of why an all-good, all-powerful God allows pain and suffering. He provides thought-provoking analysis.
Yeah, I agree.
Fantastic book.
Yep.
Now, he wrote a second one called A Grief Observed.
Yes.
And basically, the way these two books kind of work, The Problem of Pain is written from a very philosophical, logical. It addresses from a cold, hard, logical fact, like why God can let
Sometimes
allow
C.S.
evil.
Lewis is a hard read.
Yeah.
Like I'll throw that out there, but it's a good read.
It is a good read.
Yeah.
Now, his second one, though, A Grief Observed, was like he went through some personal tragedy and he was like, you know what? All of that intellectual knowledge didn't really help me when I experienced
It
myself.
became a much more personal.
And so that deals more with the emotional problem of grief.
Yeah.
And it's also very good. All right.
So would you say read both?
I would say read both, actually, yes. Number 5, I've not read this one, but I know of it. The Cost of Discipleship by Dietrich Bonhoeffer.
Yeah.
Bonhoeffer explains the meaning and importance of grace, discipleship, and self-denial from a biblical perspective.
Yep.
Good one?
I did not finish it.
Oh,
I am really good. If you guys ever visit Discovery Fellowship Church, come look at my office. I have over 1,000 books.
you have over 1,000?
Yeah, in my library
Good
there.
golly, son.
And I have at least opened every single one of them. And I'm really, really good at reading like the first 6 chapters. And then a new book comes my way and I'm like, all right, I'm done with that one. I'm going to get to the
Moving
next
on.
one. Yeah. So
you could
unfortunately,
Do that with all
I need to
these
go
then?
back and finish it. Yeah.
All right, but are you ever going to?
No, because I have 1,000 books to read.
Number 4, The Pursuit of God by A.W. Tozer. Tozer
Yep.
encourages readers to pursue a deeper relationship with God through worship, meditation on scripture, and prayer. I have read that one.
Yeah. I think I want to say that one's also available for free on ebook.
It probably is.
Yeah.
All right, number 3.
I've read that one. I have it. Sorry.
I don't know if I've read this, but I think I own it. Knowing God by J.I. Packer.
Yes, I have and have read that one.
Packer explores the character and attributes of God as revealed in the Bible. He focuses on truly knowing God intimately.
Yep. So a lot of these I have. So if you are local and you want to borrow them, you're welcome to. You can borrow any book from my library. Just let me know. Don't just walk in and steal it because sometimes I'm like, where's
fair.
this book? And then 3 months later, someone says, hey, I borrowed this book a while ago. Just let me know.
All right. Number 2. Any guesses?
Well, so
I'll have you guess number 1. You said you thought there'd be 3 Lewis ones?
yeah, is Lewis number 2 or number 1?
So I'll just tell you number 2 and then you can guess number 1.
Okay.
How's that?
Yeah.
Number 2, Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis.
Yeah, that was the one.
This could be a number 1. This classic work makes a philosophical and logical case for Christianity. Lewis examines what Christians believe and why. Phenomenal book. Started off as a bunch of radio lectures,
Yep.
so it's very conversational. I think it's pretty readable then because
I
of
love
that.
it. Yeah.
Number 2. So what do you think number 1?
Well, so we've already had 3 Lewis books, and so it can't be Lewis.
Okay.
The way he said okay makes me think maybe it is. All right. The number 1 is going to be like a Case for Christ style of book.
Oh, that's what you think, huh?
Yeah. I'm wrong, apparently.
You are wrong. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. It is a 4th C.S. Lewis.
Ah.
What do you think? If knowing that, what would be their number 1?
I mean, it's not Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, is
No.
it? Okay. I
It's
didn't
not-
think they put
it's
fiction in
not-
here.
It's not fiction.
Is Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe fiction?
I guess this one. Well.
Oh,
this-
Screw Tape.
Yep.
Yeah.
The Screw Tape
course.
Letters
That's a
by
great
C.S.
one.
Lewis. This Christian fiction book takes the form of letters from a demon giving advice to his apprentice on how to tempt a human. It provides insight into spiritual warfare.
Yeah.
Screw Tape Letters is great. I would also highly recommend it.
So Lewis made 4.
He made 4. Dude. And he didn't even necessarily believe in inerrancy.
All right. Okay, so one of these weeks we're gonna have to. Yeah. Notice I moved on quickly from that one. How dare you?
I know. I
But
love
it's true,
C.S.
though. Yeah.
Lewis, but
Yep. So all that to say, I think potentially then you don't have to throw the baby out with bathwater because there's a lot of value and things we can learn from Lewis, even though we might not agree on that point
Right.
with him. Maybe one of these days we should do top 10 books like you should read as a Christian, not from the AI, but like that you and I come up with
our own
that
lists.
aren't these ones. Maybe a little bit more less popular, more modern. I don't know.
More controversial.
More controversial. I love
It's all
it.
Mark Driscoll.
Oh man.
I'm just kidding. Okay. Well, that's our AI.
Yep.
We'll real quick go to our letters from listeners. Again, if you want to be a part of this conversation, email podcast@dfchurch.com. That's podcast@dfchurch.com, just like Tucker did. He said, hey guys, I stopped my workout to write this. Now
Nice.
our friend Tucker has been on. He's produced for us. He's now in basic training in the military.
Yeah.
So he's not hearing this.
Nope.
I feel kind of sad. We're reading his letter anyway. He said, when Nathan and Jeremiah, so that was last week's episode, we're talking about landing in the moon and how you would need to bring animals. Were you thinking like a space version of the Ark? Genesis in space. I thought that was a fun
That's
idea.
super funny, yeah.
And then he asked an actual question, though. Should or would God ordain the exploration of space, or is his plan for us to stay on Earth until the new creation is brought about? I won't be able to listen to a new episode podcast, so goodbye, everybody. Hope you're doing well. See you in 8 weeks.
Oh, that was such a sad way to end
It's
that
a
letter.
sad way to end it. But what do you think?
That's-
Is when Jesus comes back, if
Yeah.
people are living on Mars, are they like, they just don't know what happened? They fly back home.
fly
They're like,
back
wait a minute, what?
After their like 10-year mission, it's like, oh, what happened? Honestly, I don't know. And I don't think I can know that. I do think, I don't think space exploration is like against God's
will
or character or anything.
Right.
But he created us with these curious minds. And why wouldn't he want us to explore his creation?
Well, if space exploration was sinful, then any exploration, like there's nothing about space that makes it sinful. So it'd be just as sinful
it's
to
exploring God's creation.
go underwater.
And the more I like hear about and see all the different things that are being discovered in space, the more I'm like, man, God, you're good. Like,
right?
Right. Like for me, and I think we talked about this on the science podcast, but like it brings me to a different place of worship.
Right.
As I continue to just be in awe of how grand God's creation is. And so space exploration, keep doing it. I think God likes it because it draws people towards him.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you guys for joining us for episode number 52 of the Faith Life Podcast. 52 episodes. Next week, we have a very special episode planned. And it's extra special because I'm not going to be on it and Matt's not going to be on it. You
That's why
get
it's
totally
special.
different faces.
Yeah.
So my wife Alexis is going to be hosting next week. We're going to be doing a follow-up to our what it's like to be a woman in both ministry and in the church in general. And so kind of with that perspective, so obviously Matt and I are not going to be able to speak much into that.
I kept trying to say like I should be the primary content for that conversation of what it's like to be a woman in ministry.
Yeah.
Because I know so well.
Oh my goodness. In our current world, you could try to
See, no, I'm excited to hear from the ladies.
It will be from
give
people
us
who actually
give us
know.
as men
Yeah.
a perspective that we can't know ourselves. So
So it's going to be
yeah.
awesome. Definitely
excited.
tune in to that, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.